Hi everyone. For this session, what I was going to do is just try to explain what the paper is that you're going to be doing on truth and social media. I thought that would be the best thing I could do to help you get through this next assignment and clarify some of the issues that came up so that they're make more sense this time, I guess is the best way to put it. So to begin, the overall structure of the paper. What I want you to think about is that this paper is really 4 parts, and you can separate them into distinct issues that you would address. So they're distinct parts. You can almost think of this as a take-home exam where I've asked you 4 questions. I set it up as an essay because I think it's important for you to get practice on writing essays and writing something longer than 1 or 2 paragraphs together. This way you're forced to put it all together. But there are just 4 separate parts in this. And the first one is you're going to explain what the problem of truth is. And I'm going to go through each of these parts here briefly. Then you're going to explain the theory that you think is most correct. So you've got to provide an explanation of that theory. Then you give an argument for that theory. And finally, you apply it to a contemporary issue. And in this case, it's going to be social media and whether social media could be considered to convey truth according to the theory. That application is my attempt to get you to see how this is relevant to current issues that might arise. So it's not just a complete abstract topic. And in this case, we're going to do social media. But it's not until that 4th part that social media should even come up. All right, to begin, what you want to understand is that philosophy looks at problems, and we're looking at this, and the idea here is that you're going to be setting up why we're looking at the concept of truth. What is it that about this that we really want to consider? And for philosophy, most of these problems that have been discussed are actually dilemmas. And what that means is there are more than one side, and each side seems reasonable, but for some reason there's a problem with that side that needs to be overcome. So you have alternative explanations for the problem and solutions to it. And on their own, they seem reasonable. It makes a lot of sense. But if you look deeper at it, then the problems start to rise with that. So if we think about the problem of truth and what we mean by that concept, we begin by thinking, yeah, statements are really claims about reality, whether it's a claim about external world, the sun's out, it's raining, it's a claim about something in reality. It could also be a claim about an internal state. I am in pain, I am unhappy, but that's what our statements are. They're about some reality. So based on that, we generally think, well, to be a true statement, it has to match whatever it's talking about. So if I say it is raining out, the only way it's true is if there's actually precipitation coming from the sky. If I say I'm happy, well, I should have the internal state of being happy at that point. But as you can see, this is going to be a problem to verify. I can't verify someone's claim that they are happy, that they are in pain. I have no access to be able to verify those statements because I can't get into a person's body and feel what they're feeling or think what they're thinking. Similarly, there's things in the world that we can't verify. There's theoretical concepts about the world in the way it functions that we can't verify. We think they're true or fairly certain they're true, but we can't verify them. So if that's our conception of truth, that it has to match reality, but we can't verify certain statements, it kind of leaves us at a loss how we talk about truth in those contexts. That leads us to the other alternative. Well, maybe it's not something external to them, but it's the internal consistency of our statements. And we do this, we rule statements out as being true in certain contexts because they don't match other beliefs we have and other statements that we hold as true. So maybe it's just the internal consistency that's crucial. But if that's the case, I can have a whole set of consistent beliefs that do not match anything with reality. And that becomes a problem then because somebody's just making up statements and they could be a lunatic and they have no connection to reality. But if it's just based on their internal consistency of their statements, it is technically true then. So that becomes a problem, and how to overcome that is what that theory of truth is going to have to deal with. What you want to see now is this is what your introduction is about. You're setting up the problem in order to lead into the rest of the paper. So when you do this, you start with the problem, explain it, and then you can tell me what else is going to go in your paper. That's the full introduction, but you want to set the problem up for what's going to be dealt with from there on. So that was the first part of the paper. The next part you're going to have to do is explain one of these theories. Sorry about the glitch there. And there are two theories that we're going to look at, or possible looking at. The first one is the correspondence theory of truth. And this claims that a statement is true when it matches whatever it is about. It's got to match that external reality that's out there, or internal if it's a statement about one's own personal states. And this is just the common sense view. This is what people generally think it means to say a statement is true or a belief is true, is that it matches the way the world is. And what's key about this is truth is seen as something external to the statement itself. The truth of a statement lies in what the world is like, or what the internal states of the person is like. That's where we find truth, not in the statement itself or the belief itself, but in those external realities that's independent of the person that's making the statement. So to illustrate this really briefly, there's an object on the screen, and if you look at that, what we can say is this is a red circle. And that statement, this is a red circle, will be true as long as there is a red circle right next to it. And in this case, it's a red circle, so the statement would be true. It corresponds to the state of affairs that exists there. That's the basic idea of the correspondence theory of truth. The alternative theory is the coherence theory. And this one says that truth resides and rests when statements are consistent with other statements that people accept as true. What this means when we say that the statements are consistent with other statements that are accepted as true is that truth is going to be an internal property. It's internal to the set of beliefs a person has. It's not resting on something external to the belief or the person who's making the statement or the belief. So it's internal. It's a consistency that exists within the beliefs. And I thought I'd illustrate this. And I'm going to illustrate it a little differently than I did the other one. So deciduous trees drop their leaves each fall. That's, by definition, what deciduous trees are. They're ones that do not keep their leaves all year. So that's a widely accepted belief. If I tell you all the maple trees in my yard keep their leaves year round, you're going to say, no, that's not a true statement because it's inconsistent with the first statement. So there's not that internal consistency that exists there. And since that second statement isn't consistent with the first statement, which is a generally accepted claim, we can say, no, that second one is false. So that illustrates how a statement would be false. If I said, all my maple trees in my yard are dropping their leaves right now in the fall, then you would say, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's consistent with the other beliefs we have about deciduous trees. So that's the theories. You're going to want to take some time and explain each theory, or not each theory, just the one theory you're going to present. Right, which then brings us to the third part of the paper, and this is the arguments. And I'm just going to summarize these really briefly here. So the first one for the correspondence theory is what I call the duh argument. Duh, this is what makes sense. If a statement is true, it's because it's accurately describing some state of affairs that exists. It's common sense. We don't even have to make an argument for it. And basically, that was Plato's argument. He said, what else would it be? And Aristotle articulated it slightly more than that, but it was basically a sentence. Truth is just whatever matches the way the world is. Anybody who rejects that just doesn't know what they're talking about. So that's one argument, not a real sophisticated argument. But if we turn to the next argument, the idea is that truth isn't something that can come from itself. This is Russell's argument that truth has to be independent of the statement. It's a property of the statement, so you can't have it as a property of itself. So there needs to be something that verifies this as a true statement, and it cannot come from itself. That's the other argument. In coherence theory, we've identified two arguments as well. The first one is beliefs, they reside in our head. And they exist independently of the world that we know. We don't directly know that world. So if we don't know the world directly, then our beliefs, the only thing we've got to ensure that they're consistent or that they're true is their consistency with each other. So that's what we have access to, is our beliefs and our ideas. So we have to rely on those to determine what a true belief is. This comes out of idealism, basically. And the other argument that is up there is, if it's impossible to have a set of statements that describe the world entirely, because it's just impossible, we can't have a complete set of statements about the world and verify each statement with the world, we have to turn to some other criteria for whether a statement is true. And that leaves us then with coherence and the consistency of our beliefs. And that's the second argument for coherence theory. To get a little better idea of these, again, if you go back to week 5 and review part 2 and look at the readings from this week 6, the module, you'll have a better idea of what those are. But they're in there, they're short. I'm not expecting you to do really long with these arguments. I want you to summarize the argument and present it clearly and accurately without just copying it. So that's one of the key things you want to be able to do. All right, at this point, you've explained what the problem of truth is, you've presented a theory, you've given an argument for why that theory should be accepted. Now we're going to take your knowledge that you've demonstrated there and apply it to a situation. And when I was redesigning this course this fall, the one thing I came up with was social media. This is where people get their news and their information. So, but there's a question of whether it's true or not. So why don't we apply what truth says in terms of the theories of truth and apply it to social media? And this is the topic you have to address. You're not going to do anything with social media up to this point. This got some people off in the previous paper on artificial intelligence, and that you wanted to talk about artificial intelligence right up front. It wasn't a question of whether artificial intelligence was possible. It was an assumption we were going to make. In the same way, we're going to assume social media is out there, that people are actually getting their news and their information from this, and we're going to address this topic. The theory you've just described, if it looked at social media and applied the criteria on which it says a statement is true, what would it say about social media? Would it say social media is presenting truth or not? Or is it true? Is social media true according to the correspondence theory? Is it true according to the coherence theory? And to do that, what you're going to have to do is several parts. First, re-stress what the key aspect of the theory claims truth is. Okay? You need that up there at front. Whatever the basic idea of truth is for that theory, make it clear. Then you're going to state your position. This is a straightforward thing, but it's crucial. According to this theory, social media would be considered to present as truth, or is not considered as truth. Just state your position there. Then you can start connecting with what the social media does or is, and whether it meets or fails to meet the criteria you've specified in number 1. Okay? You want to be able to justify that and make that connection between social media and that criteria of truth that the theory is talking about. And then explain why number 3 justifies your claim in number 2. What's your justification for thinking I'm right when I say social media is giving the truth according to this theory, or it does not give truth according to this theory? Apply the theory in that context. Okay? So that's what you're trying to do with the application part, and that's where you start looking at social media. Okay? again, what I want to stress is these are 4 distinct issues you have to do, and I'm looking at those. That's what the rubric lines up at. How well do you do each of these parts? Explain the problem with truth. How well do you explain the theory? How well do you present the argument you're presenting that supports it? And then how well are you able to apply that theory to this particular issue of social media? That's all I'm looking at. I don't expect you to do any outside research. I've given you everything you need to do. I'm not expecting real sophisticated, I'm going out, I'm going to make my own argument. This is a 100 level class. I expect you to be able to recount what's there. And I had an instructor in grad school, she made us do this. Even though we were in upper level graduate courses, she would make us write papers without a single quote. You want to show me that you understand the material, and to be able to write a paper without using a quote forced us to be able to explain the concepts that we're talking about. That's what I'm looking for. I just want to see your understanding of it and how well you can present this material back to me. So don't try to go off tangent or anything. Just, I'm only looking at that introductory level, and that's what I'm looking for. How well can you do that recounting of this information? All right, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. The Module 7 discussion, you can post questions there. Some people did last time, and I try to look at it every day. Some days I miss a day, but if you see something you can respond to, feel free. But contact me if you do have any questions. If you post something there and I don't respond right away, just shoot me an email and I can make sure I get right on it and look at that. Okay? Have a good rest of the week.